When learned how to dance, I was a child, and that's usually when we start. I could dance any style that I wanted to when I was a child, and then when I got to be, I'd say about 12 or 13, then I started as a fancy dancer, and I stayed in that category till I was about like 17 or 18. And then I didn't dance anymore for a while. I went away to school and got kind of left a powwow trail for a while. And then when I came back, I started as a jingle dress dancer, which is what I am now. And if I ever gain any wisdom, I may advance to traditional dancing. They're the ones that, they keep the knowledge that we need to survive as a people.
Bonjour. I'm Doris Isham, chairwoman of the Bois Forte band of Chippewa. I'm proud to share with you a collection of some of the stories and memories of our people that will describe our cultural heritage and our plans for the future. Part of the richness of an oral history is that everyone speaks for themselves, and the many different versions form a common truth.
My father told me the story of the origin of the Nett Lake people, and the story went like this. Long ago, the Ojibwe people were wanderers. They had come from far in the east to find a home for themselves. They wanted a nice place to settle down. The Ojibwe people listened to the elders of the tribe, for they were very wise, having spent many winters on this earth. Many of the elders had special gifts or powers to help their people. In one band of Ojibwes, there was a wise old man. This man had dreams over and over about a special place where he could go to pick a wonderful medicine that would help his people. He wondered what the dreams meant, for he knew that he was being told something of great importance. In his dream, the old man saw a large lake covered with Minomen. Minomen was a very special gift to the Anishinaabe, a gift from the Great Spirit. The lake was very big and had thousands of ducks and geese on it. There were many animals for the Ojibwe to hunt. Finally, one day he told his people of the dreams he had. The people listened, for they knew that many things were told them in dreams. They left by canoe and traveled down a river, now called the Lost River. The old man became excited as he began to recognize places he had seen in his dream. He knew that truly his dreams were leading his people to something important. The whole band wondered where they were going. Soon the river widened, and the old man saw a large and beautiful lake covered with Minomen. Ducks and geese were all over. The people could see a small island in the distance, and on the shore they could see children playing and sliding in the water. The old man and his band stopped and walked on the island. There they saw the medicine and began to pick it. As they picked the medicine, the people saw many different symbols on the rocks of the island. Even below the water, they saw the sacred symbols on the rocks. As he gathered medicine, he looked up and saw a spirit which looked like a man standing nearby. The old man walked over to the spirit and stood near him. The spirit talked to the old man and told him many things. The elders of this band to this day do not and will not tell what the spirit told the old man. The spirit wore a shirt that was as fine as spider's web. The Anishinaabe still live today on this lake, where the old man led them.
The Bois Forte Indians, who call themselves Anishinaabe, have long lived in the great northern woods. In fact, early French explorers called the Indians after the tall, thick forests. In French, Bois Forte means strong tree. The Bois Forte people lived in harmony with the rhythms of nature. Rather than staying in one location, they moved through the woods as the seasons changed, always finding what they needed from the land and the waters.
My personal philosophy is that we were never a people who were set in one place and actually had different camps, such as the Sugar Bush camp, such as our fishing camps, and our blueberry camps or summer camps.
On my grandfather's side, he said that they lived like on a lake. They stayed right on a lake in the summertime on an island, and whatever the season was, you know, they went over like to do the maple sugar. They would go to that area.
I went and lived with my grandma when I was about 4 years old. And I used to help her when she did things like make birch bark baskets and stuff like that. I would be the one that climbs up in a tree and get with a knife, and I would come down with the knife and then she would take a stick and she would go around the tree with it, and the bark would fall down.
We used to go picking blueberries. They used to ripen about in July. Pa'd take us out there. Then that was quite a time for us to go blueberry picking, you know. That was a lot of fun.
My favorite memory is when I first went rice with my grandmother. I was just a little bit of a kid. She used to knock the rice. That was fun for me, though, you know.
My grandpa had a house in that lake, and that's where everybody would come, you know, to go ricing in that lake, and that's where we'd be. And there'd be campers around my grandpa's house, and they'd all have a parching place to parch, and they'd all take turns parching rice. And everybody would cook in my grandpa's house. And to us, you know, the way we feel about wild rice it is very important to us, because we'd like to keep the tradition going, you know, our way, you know, doing the traditional way, like we try.
Although ricing and other Bois Forte traditions were very strong, they did change when Europeans began arriving in the late 1600s and early 1700s.
When they first came here, the fur and the timber companies, when our lifestyle started to change, they liked the goods, you might say, that they had to make it faster. It's like the pots, the big kettles. They could boil, cook faster. The rifles was better than the bow and arrows. And the steel traps, axes, saws, made our life faster, so to speak.
The rich land and natural resources in the region attracted more and more non-Indians. So the U.S. government began taking what it wanted through a series of treaties.
The substance of the Treaty of 1854 was basically to cede all of the land from International Falls to Duluth up to Grand Portage, in which we would move out of the lands, but we would cede that territory to the United States government. In return to ceding all of that territory, the United States government said that you may hunt and fish and gather, you know, so long as the winds blow.
Under the terms of the Treaty of 1854, the Bois Forte Indians were given the right to select reservation lands in the vicinity of Lake Vermilion, which was the heart of their community. The lake is a vital link with waterways to the west, east, and north, and was a key location for travelers and traders. Although the Bois Forte people traditionally moved with the seasons, the largest group of them tended to live around Lake Vermilion, which was the ancestral homeland to many of them. Unfortunately, Indian rights didn't matter when reports of gold beneath the Bois Forte lands began to circulate. the rush was on to move white prospectors onto the lands and Indians off.
I think the most significant portion of history regarding the gold rush was that the impact that it had on the Bois Forte people. When you have a bunch of people vying for natural resource interests, someone has to bend, and unfortunately it was the people of Bois Forte who, through an act of Congress, had to relocate to the Nett Lake reservation.
This was the Treaty of 1866. Under the terms of this treaty, all claims to a reservation near Lake Vermilion were relinquished, and a reservation of about 100,000 acres was established at Nett Lake. Even though the Bois Forte people were forced to move, a strong leader named Chief Bustacoggin managed to protect them. He insisted that the Bois Forte Indians have certain rights when they were moved from Vermilion to Nett Lake.
He was a great defender, I guess, of our people's rights, or one of the first great defenders of our way of life and of our people's rights. And to me, he's one of our most well-respected and one of the forefront leaders of, that shaped the way we are right now.
Even though the Vermilion Reservation was reestablished by an 1881 executive order, the Bois Forte Indians were only given back 1,000 acres instead of the tens of thousands they had been promised in the Treaty of 1854. Beginning in 1889, the federal government continued to take away from the Indians. It offered them small individual allotments on their reservation, then sold the rest of the land to lumber companies and other non-Indians. Indians who did take allotments often lost them later on because they did not realize they had to pay taxes on land where timber was logged. As a result, the Bois Forte people lost nearly 2/3 of their land. Even worse, the government began requiring Indians to prove they were competent, and then took children away from so-called incompetent families so they could be assimilated into the white culture at far-off boarding schools.
When I was very young, about 5 years old, I went away to a boarding school. We couldn't speak our native tongue. If we did, we were punished. And I had a few real tragic incidents while I was there with my girlfriends that taught me to really look out for other people, which I've been doing most of my life.
Did assimilation work? No. I don't believe it did. I guess to some extent, of course, it did. It was an insidious policy, I guess, and it did succeed in destroying a lot that Indian people hold dear.
A lot of them, what they did to the parents, they would just go around. I suppose if they had room for more students, they'd just go out to the lakes and pick up kids. They wouldn't even tell the parents. And then the parents, or if the grandparents were babysitting, well, they come and took your kids. They're sending them to school, That's what they did. They didn't have a choice whether or not to keep their kids home.
In the 1920s, progressive people in this country started taking a look at how Indians were being educated and took a real good look at boarding schools. The Merriam Report in 1928 blasted the boarding schools. The Indian Reorganization Act in the early 1930s then paved the way for dissolving the whole system.
The Indian Reorganization Act was a recognition that assimilation had failed and that Indian people and Indian governments should be strengthened, not weakened. It was followed by other policies of the 20th century, such as the Freedom of Religion Act, the Indian Child Welfare Act, and the Indian Self-Determination Act, which marked a new respect for Indian sovereignty and self-governance. Indian nations like Bois Forte were offered the choice of managing their own government programs. Also during this century, the Minnesota Chippewa tribe was formed as a political union of 6 Chippewa bands. This helped the Bois Forte band further strengthen its tribal government. By 1997, the Bois Forte Reservation Tribal Council had assumed full control over the delivery of all government programs and services to its people. Today, as the Bois Forte Band enters the 21st century, the Tribal Council employs more than 100 people to provide the programs and services that band members need, including education, housing, healthcare, law enforcement, protection of natural resources, food assistance, recreation, and job services.
Well, people are using the programs more, and which is cool to me, you know, I wouldn't be sitting here if we didn't have these programs here, you know.
The Bois Forte Band is particularly proud of Nett Lake School, which opened in 1995 after band officials lobbied hard at the state capitol for the new facility.
We did a lot of knocking on legislatures' doors, doing the lobbying bit, in which we spent several days and several weeks, as a matter of fact, testifying before various committees so that we could get the funding for it.
The state agreed and partnered with the band to build the beautiful new school, which was designed and decorated with Indian spirituality in mind. For example, a focal point of the building is a central hall with a glass ceiling. Known as the Path of Life, this hall progresses through rooms dedicated to programs and services for each age group: infants, young children, teenagers, and adults.
Personally, I've seen the school evolve from basically a 6-room classroom with a gym into this big multi-room, multifaceted educational institution, which to us right here is our landmark. I mean, I'm so proud of that building.
The band is also working hard to build its economy so it can provide good jobs and new opportunities for its people. The Bois Forte Band owns a sawmill, a wild rice marketing program, and Fortune Bay Resort and Casino. The seeds of Fortune Bay's success were planted in the mid-1980s when the band opened its first casino, which offered high-stakes bingo. Then in 1988, the Indian Gaming Regulatory Act was signed into law, recognizing that tribes had the power to regulate gaming on their own land. The Bois Forte Band signed gaming compacts with the state of Minnesota, and in 1995 began construction on Fortune Bay Resort and Casino.
For me, Fortune Bay has not only provided a job, it shows me and a lot of other band members that the need for education is vital in business. So what I've did is combine both my work experience with over 13 years of gaming experience and took the time to have an education also during that. Hopefully the people that do both can come back and work for their people, the Bois Forte Band.
I think we're living in an age now where one can be a professional and still be fluent in the language and take part in traditional ceremonies. I think we should look forward to a future where we can now combine them and no one's going to be self-conscious about it.
To me, being an American Indian today is something that I'm proud of. I think life is a circle, and I think we were once a great nation itself, and I think life is a circle. We're going to come back around.
The continuance of the circle rests in our children's understanding their rich legacy and carrying it proudly into the future.
I hope this video has given you a better understanding of what it means to be an American Indian and a member of the Bois Forte Band. By sharing with our own people and others, we help preserve the powerful culture that makes us who we are today. Miigwech.